Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Tricia Bruce Phillip. I am 34 years of age. I'm married. I'm a mother of 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. I'm also a teacher. I teach at school for blind children. I love singing. I attend church. I'm involved in serving whenever they ask me to sing and so forth. My children are involved in crusaders. But generally, we would go to Trinity Mall and take in a good movie. Yeah, people think that's, why are you going to the movies? Yes, I enjoy a good movie. And many of my friends love descriptive movies, which is what is made especially for blind persons or persons who are blind. They would sit and there's a voice while the movie is going on that would describe all the actions that you would not see. Just as for persons who are deaf, you would have the closed caption writing on the bottom of the screen for they wouldn't hear. But I take in a general regular movie. I actually prefer a regular movie as opposed to the descriptive movie, and it may have a lot to do with the fact that I could have seen before, and I find that my imagination does a lot more than the describer. So I go out to eat, we go out on limes, we go turtle watching. My group of us from my staff went turtle watching. That experience was so surreal, just touching this large living being.
Beautiful.
While the turtle was laying her eggs. It was amazing to experience. I have friends who zip line and all those kinds of things.
Regular lives.
Yes, regular. So that's one of the assumptions. The people tend to think that we don't have regular lives, we don't have romantic feelings, and we certainly can't have families and live independently. When people are conversing with me and they hear that I have 3 children, they are utterly shocked. You have children? And you look so young and innocent. And I am thinking, okay.
Now, you mentioned at the beginning, you said blind and then you said visually impaired.
Yes.
You know, for people who are watching this and they are not familiar with the terms, is there a difference between calling someone blind and calling someone visually impaired?
Well, visually impaired seems to be the term that encapsulates an entire spectrum, because you can have different degrees of vision. So you can go from, there are people who can still read print as small as the daily newspaper, and you would find them holding it to what you think looks normal, but then there are many things they can't see and they have been diagnosed as legally blind. There's the extreme other end of that where you're totally blind, absence of even light, and all the different degrees in between. For me as an example, I can see colors and I can see your outline, but I can't tell you any type of features on your face. I can't tell you the color of your eyes, and I have glaucoma, so some things I would see some days and some days I would miss it.
Now, you mentioned and you said that you lost most of your eyesight in adulthood.
Yes.
How was that like for you? And it was something difficult, something that took adjustment over time?
It definitely did take adjustment. I don't think that most people around me noticed, because it was more of a mental adjustment than anything else. I had to mentally accept that I was losing my vision. I had to accept that I needed to use my cane. All these things were challenges for me, but most people didn't know. It was a gradual process. It didn't just happen overnight. So one day I was traveling in the Maxi and I found that I was seeing more darkness coming from the side of my eyes, because in glaucoma we don't have peripheral vision. We only see straight ahead.
That must have been quite a scary experience in a way.
It was a bit scary, but I think because I've always had sight challenge or visual impairment, it was not as difficult for me to adapt. It was more mental, whereas if it was a sighted person who lost their vision in their adulthood, it wouldn't just be mental adaptation. They'd have to adapt their whole life in learning how to do things. Many things I've always been accustomed to doing a lot of things using my sense of touch and hearing, so it wasn't too difficult.
We were talking earlier about something off camera, and I would like to mention that to you again.
Sure.
we were talking about that sometimes people who can see would like to help, quote unquote help, someone who might need to cross the road.
Yeah.
What is the right approach? I was thinking about this last night. I was preparing questions for this interview, and I was thinking that the first thing that should be done, I'm not sure if you agree or not, is to ask first if they need help. We assume that they need help.
That is definitely the first thing. Whether it was a blind person or an old lady toting what seemed to be heavy market bags, you won't just go and grab the lady's bag. She would think she's being robbed. And so the same thing, same sort of reasoning should apply. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And a lot of people are offended by being grabbed. No one wants to be grabbed. So really, what you should do if you want to provide assistance, you approach the person and you say, excuse me, would you like help crossing the street? And if the person says yes, because sometimes we don't want help. Sometimes wherever your mind is mentally, you need to do it on your own, or one little change could really have you disoriented. Especially if it's an area that you are not so familiar with. The person might cross you in a particular way and put you on the side of the road that you're not accustomed walking on. Like I was telling my son today, I'm very territorial. So when we're walking out of Mount Hope Hospital, if I'm not walking out on the eastern pathway and I'm on the western pathway, which is close to the car park, I would feel so lost. So the same thing can happen to many people. You approach by asking if they would like assistance. Once they agree and they accept, you offer your arm. You say, well, here's my arm, and you can gently let your arm, your upper arm from your elbow go up, touch the person, so they would know that they have to take just above your elbow. They would gently hold, and you can go ahead and guide them.
How would you describe the level of resources available to the blind and visually impaired in Trinidad and Tobago?
The resources are available, not always locally, but they are quite expensive. So, for example, I use an iPhone because I find that VoiceOver is the most effective speech software for phones. It's integrated into the phone, and we rarely get problems. We are able to surf the net, read newspapers, Facebook, Twitter. I use my phone to plan lessons, all sorts of things. I can even now, there are textbooks. I have my son photograph pages of exercises I'd like to go through with my students, and there are apps that could then read the text from the photograph. So that is something that makes you independent, but an iPhone is not cheap. Same thing with using computers. I don't write anymore, so my computer is my book and pen, and I use JAWS, which stands for Job Access with Speech, a screen reader. It's that too is quite expensive.
How much we are talking about?
The JAWS program, I'm not even sure what it's going for right now. I know that a few years ago it was like, when you convert it, about 12,000 TT. It could have reduced a bit, but it's in the thousands.
What are some of the things people should never say to someone who is visually impaired? I'm sure you have many experiences like that.
I know one of the things people say is, why are you coming? Why are you going out? Why you don't stay home and send somebody to do it for you? You know, so that makes you feel inadequate. I am a person and I want to be able to handle my business by myself. I know that you are concerned about my safety when you see me crossing the street or walking the road, but I'm fine. And once I'm not inconveniencing you, it's alright. So that's one thing. Another thing people tend to say is, if they see you have children, who do that to you? Who do you that? As if it was some type of involuntary experience. And often people don't know that, yes, you got married, you're in love, you have a family. Most of all, people should not say, you can't do that because you're blind. No. Find out how I would be able to do it. There's very little that we cannot do as persons who are blind. The thing about it is that we may have to find different ways of doing it than the conventional way. So I cook and I clean, and people would say, well, how do you clean? So you may sweep and you would see what you're doing, but for me, I can't sweep with shoes on. I have to be able to feel with the bottom of my feet how clean I'm sweeping. So that's my way of sweeping. But sometimes, people say, but wait, boy, you sweep better than me, yeah?
So would you agree that the motto should be always presume competence?
Definitely. Always presume competence, but understand that I may not do it your conventional way. It is really our responsibility as persons with disabilities to help people understand. We have a large part to play in awareness, because people often shun or mistreat what they don't understand. For people who may be losing their sight or who have lost their sight, I'd like to just encourage you that this is not the end of life. It's just a new way of learning to do the things you were always enjoying. And there are organizations that can help. I know often many medical facilities and our public hospitals, they too may not always be aware. So the patients don't get proper guidance as to what's the next step beyond medical approaches. So the doctor finds out you can't see anymore and they send you home. But there are organizations such as Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare or PAVI that you can find out about. Ask. You go and you join as a client. Then there are people who are called adjustment to blindness officers or welfare officers who would really visit with you, come home and show you how to get mobile again, how to use your cane and navigate your neighborhood, how to wash clothes being blind, how to cook. So there is hope and life goes on. It's just a new way, and sometimes it can be more interesting than you think. And for people who are sighted, or even any person who is without a disability, what we need to understand is blind, visually impaired, deaf, hearing impaired. In the communities of different disabilities, people have that debate, and some people prefer to be referred to one way while others argue the other. But the important thing is person first language. We should always try our best, especially when we're speaking in official forums or writing, to use person first language. I know it doesn't come naturally because we are so colloquial and we love our Creole dialects. It's very difficult when I'm speaking in Creole dialect to say a person who is blind, but definitely in your speaking, when you just meet someone, when you're writing a paper or anything like that, try to remember we are people first. So yes, I'm blind, but I'm a person who is blind.